Hello, everybody. With the second Trump administration underway, craft beer employers and HR managers are wondering, are we in compliance and what changes are coming? Today, I'm joined by Andrew, General Counsel at myHRcounsel, who will break down key employment law shifts, including immigration. How could mass deportation impact your workforce? Employee benefits. What's next for the Affordable Care Act? And quite a few four-letter abbreviations like EEOC, NLRB, and OSHA that I'll let Andrew dive into. But first, let's get to know our guest. Andrew, how's your day going?
It's going great, Andrew. Thanks for having me. A little bit of snow here in Milwaukee.
I don't normally get to talk to another Andrew, so I have to ask, is your middle name Michael as well?
No, William. I have two middle names because I'm an attorney. So William Ryan.
That's
Andrew
fancy.
William Ryan Nielsen.
I love it. So tell us a little bit more about what you do and what myHRcounsel is.
Sure. I am, for lack of a better phrase, a fancy law talking guy. Employers come to us. We have a subscription model, and we're basically an online, on-demand law firm. To put it as succinctly as possible, people ask us employment law questions, HR questions, you name it. I have probably heard it. From crazy group chats to people doing really egregious things at Christmas parties. I've got some really fun stories. Some of them are not fit to share in public, but we answer through an online portal, employment law and HR questions all day long, every day.
So high level, why is the conversation we're about to have important and really, good for brewery owners and managers to listen to right now?
So this administration has started off gangbusters in terms of what they're doing in terms of employment law, in terms of how they're changing the law, how they're challenging the status quo of the law. This is not your ordinary presidential administration shift where, the pendulum swings from the left to the right or the right to the left, depending on who's coming and who's leaving office. This has really been kind of a cataclysmic shift. Employment law LinkedIn is kind of crazy right now. I open it every morning, when I get to work, and yields, people, hot takes, cold takes, whatever. It's just people, for the most part, are kind of dumbfounded just in terms of the sheer pace of change, which normally, the federal government, you think bureaucracy, you think kind of a glacial pace, but just the cataclysmic shifts in terms of how things are being done and what is being done is just kind of shaking up employment law world. And so it's just something that you need to keep your finger on the pulse of to make sure that you're not going to run afoul of any of the new changes that have happened or will happen.
Awesome. Well, I'm excited to learn today. So what are we going to be talking about?
All right. We are going to talk a little bit about immigration, employee benefits stuff, Department of Labor, Equal Employment Opportunity Commission, OSHA, Occupational Safety and Health Administration. We're going to talk a little bit about the National Labor Relations Board. We're going to talk a little bit about DOGE. Oh, actually, we're not talking about DOGE. If we have time, we're going to talk about DOGE, and we're going to talk about Chevron. If you guys really want to geek out with me, those are extra bonus content that we may not get to. But if anybody's super interested, feel free to reach out to me, and I will dork out on you about those on your own time if you're super interested in that.
And I do want to point out that we've had quite a few of our members of Craft Beer Professionals reach out with questions. So in some of these slides that Andrew's going to walk us through, I'm going to be asking questions that have been submitted prior to this talk.
Cool. And I do appreciate those questions. They, I think they're great. I think they help you not have to hear me drone on and law dork out on you too much.
Let's dive in.
All right.
So I'll lead with the question that someone submitted with regards to immigration. So they say, in regards to immigration status, how is the law verbiage going to change when onboarding new employees?
Yeah, this is an interesting area, to stay apolitical. The main plank, one of the main planks that President Trump ran on in terms of the election is that he's going to seal the border and he's going to deport all the illegal immigrants, and everyone's going to go away and nobody's going to come. And so to me, the easiest way to ensure that people in this country who are not supposed to be in this country aren't working is to utilize a thing called E-Verify. So a lot of you, when you hire employees, you'll recognize this Form I-9 on the left slide here, which is the form that you have to fill out to prove that you're eligible to work in the United States and to hold a job in the United States legally. What happens, though, is if you see at the bottom, you have to present documents. There's a List A document, or you can present a List B and List C document that's supposed to prove who you are and that you're eligible to work in the United States. The thing is, the way the law is written, you do not have to be an expert at identifying forged documents or fake documents or making sure that the person presenting the document is actually legitimately the person presenting that document. Way back last century, when I was an undergrad, I used to be a bouncer. And so I was really good at spotting fake IDs. I was really good. I was in La Crosse, which is the border of Wisconsin and Minnesota. People from Minnesota had the credit card IDs and they could take the soldering irons and try to change their numbers. People from Wisconsin had to peel the lamination and use an X-Acto knife to change the numbers in both their birth date and, if they were smart, to do their driver's license number, because I can tell when you were born based upon that. They do not hold human resources to that same standard. So when they're looking at an I-9, they don't care if you don't know if it's a fake or not. You just has to look reasonably authentic to you, and you move on. So my suspicion, and there are rumors, is that the Trump administration might go to something called E-Verify. So E-Verify already exists. It's a platform run through USCIS, DHS, that basically you feed in all this information from the I-9, especially the documentation, the employee ID, the driver's license number, or the passport number, or whatever identification you have. And what the federal government does is they check that out. And what they do is they say, yep, that's a legit person. They're able to work, and you get a confirmation. Or sometimes they'll say, hey, whoa, we got to double check something. Something doesn't match up. A lot of times it has to do with matronymic names or patronymic names with, people from Hispanic country. We ran across a lot of that doing Affordable Care Act forms back in the day, which I've tried to forget all about. But what their rumors are is that the Trump administration will make this E-Verify mandatory. They'll make it so that employees are going to be required to use E-Verify in order to hire new employees. To me, that makes a lot of sense. If your goal is to stop people from coming here, if they know they can't get a job when they come here, even if they use fake documents, or to stop people who actually come here still from actually being able to get a job, there's really no reason to be here at that point. So to me, it makes too much sense to not do it, which means it probably won't happen. But keep an eye out and an ear out for it. I mean, you'll know if the government says you have to do mandatory E-Verify. Right now, some states do require it. I think Tennessee is one of them. Off the top of my head that I know for sure. Federal contractors have to do it. If you have a federal contract for over, I think it's $50,000, you have to use E-Verify. But I think it's something that's going to come down the road. If I were the Democrats, I would jump out in front of it and pass this. I mean, they should have done it during the Biden administration and jump out and say, hey, we're tough on immigrants too. We want to make sure that everyone who's working is actually legit working, and mandate it, and maybe stolen some of the thunder from the Trump platform. But they didn't call me, so I didn't get to advise them on that. But it's something to pay attention to. Immigration status, who's legal, who's illegal. right now is kind of changing. Homeland Security just revoked some of the protections for Venezuelan citizens. I saw something, I didn't read it all up yet, but Haitian refugees yesterday, there was something in my employment law news feed that I didn't read yet about that I got to catch up on. And what they're doing is these people who actually from Venezuela or Haiti, who are in the country legally right now and came here legally, they're basically moving the goalposts on them and saying, well, you were legal up until this date, but we're going to move that date earlier. So all of a sudden, people who were here legally and were working legally magically become illegal. And so it's kind of we could have a policy discussion about whether or not that's fair or not, but it's something that you got to keep on top of should you have any employees that are actually here under a temporary protected status or something similar to protect them. And just finally on immigration stuff is they're going to probably doing a lot of I-9 audits, inspections. I'm sorry. The technical word is a notice of inspection from ICE. And they're going to send you a letter and they'll say within 3 business days, you have to show us basically an employee roster, people that have been terminated within the last 3 years, and provide us all with copies of the I-9s for all those individuals. The best thing you can do right now, because you can't avoid it if it happens, is to make sure that you have a process to handle it. Should that happen, make sure you know who's in charge of scooping up I-9s, who can grab them up, where are they? Are they stored electronically? Are they stored in paper in somebody's in HR's drawer, underneath the candy? Figure out where they are so that you have a plan to be able to bust them out when you get when you get a notice from ICE, to make sure that you can comply. And if you can, extra bonus points if you can run an internal audit yourself. Just take a perusal over your I-9s and make sure you can find them and make sure that they have all the information in them that's required. Make sure you wrote down the list A or list B and C documents that are there. Make sure that section 1's filled out, section 2's filled out. Those are the main ones that you got to worry about. And if there aren't, there are ways to fix them. And it's not super hard. It's pretty easy. And so that's something I've actually, back, in the first Trump administration, helped a lot of employers with, was fixing I-9 errors, whether they were doing on internal audits that they caught.
Good insight there, Andrew. I'm sure that answered the person's question. I'll ask now, if anyone has any additional questions, what's the best way for them to reach out to you following?
Yeah, if you guys have information about signing up or anything like that, you want to talk to one of the salesy type people, which is not me. Again, I'm fancy law talking guy. But if you have information about signing up, shoot an email to info at myHRcounsel, spelled like in my name there, COUNSEL.com. And Dan or Ann probably will get that email and reach back out to you. Help you sign up if you want. If you have other questions about this webinar today, some follow-up questions, feel free to shoot me an email. Personally, my email is Nielsen, just my first initial last name as spelled on the screen, at myHRcounsel.com. More than willing to at least help people figure out which way's up.
Awesome. Thanks, Andrew. Now, you ready to talk employee benefits?
Absolutely.
Cool. So I'll tee off with a question that we had someone also submit, and they asked, will we see a repeal and replacement of the Affordable Care Act? What are your thoughts on that?
Short answer, I don't think so. Long answer, anything is possible with this administration. There's things that have happened that don't make sense to me internally with their own dialogue. And there are some things that have been completely expected. So if you go back to the first Trump administration, if you can find yourself back in that space 5 years ago, whenever it was, 4 years ago, I guess, if I can do math. He basically ran on repealing and replacing the Affordable Care Act, and he never did. I think every week it seemed like there was a question. It was like, when's your plan for repealing and replacing coming out? And he said next week. And it kept being next week, next week, next week is like, I'll pay you, next Tuesday for a hamburger today. And it never happened. And there was a lot of ink, both digital, pixels and actual real, newsletters and stuff. There's a lot of ink spilled by employee benefit specialists like me and people much smarter than me that, there's a lot of hand wringing and pearl clutching about what's going to happen. How are we going to manage this repeal and replacement of the ACA? What's it going to look like? And it never happened. And if you look back to the platform, laid out, at the RNC and as President Trump stumped during the election cycle, there wasn't a whole lot of that. There wasn't a whole lot of talk about the ACA at all. I think the one thing that I can remember was during one of the debates, they asked him if he had a plan, and he said he had concepts of a plan. So he basically could have taken that opportunity if it was really a big priority to him and his administration to say, hey, we are going to completely overthrow this ACA. It's terrible. And I have a plan and we're going to roll it out, but they never did. It's not like last time where they threatened it. This time is kind of like not even an afterthought. So I don't think the ACA is dead. I do think there are things that are going to happen to the ACA. I'm a little surprised it didn't happen yet because reporting was just due. But next year, I wouldn't be surprised towards the end of this year if you hear some changes with the ACA. One thing I might expect is that they might just completely eliminate the employer mandate penalty. So if you're over 50 employees, which I don't know how many of us on this webinar are, you have to provide health insurance to your employees that are full-time equivalents. And if you don't, you get a penalty. Well, what they could do instead of repealing the ACA is simply eliminate those penalties. If there's no penalties, it doesn't matter if you provide it or not. If you're in violation, there's no penalty. It might just go away. It might never come back. So ACA, not dead yet. I wouldn't be surprised if it lasts entire 4 years.
Awesome.
There are a whole bunch of other employee benefit stuff that he could do. Some of which makes sense to you brewer types. You tend to be smaller. You tend to be less in terms of overhead, and medical plans are expensive. I think I've been, ever since I started, and it's actually a funny story. I forgot about this until yesterday. My second job was at the Brewery Credit Union in Milwaukee, in between the old Schlitz, Blatz, and Pat's breweries downtown on 3rd Street. Every year, they're like, healthcare is going up. We're going to have to charge you more. And that was, in the late 90s, early 2000s. And I don't think I've heard it say, oh, we're going to give you a lowered premium this year because actually medical costs have gone down. I don't think I've seen it yet. And I don't think I'll ever see it until something happens meaningful in terms of how American healthcare is administered. But that's, that's a discussion for a beer, not today. But ICRAs. I wouldn't be surprised to see the Trump administration fully codify ICRAs, which are individual choice health reimbursement arrangements. And I've set up a fair number of these over the last 4 years, maybe about 100, I'd say. And ICRAs, basically what they do is they allow you to reimburse your employees for their insurance premiums that they get out on the open market, on the marketplace. And so you do not have to provide group health insurance. You can do an ICRA, and you provide a certain amount of funding, depending on how you want to figure it out, to help employees offset that cost. That way your cost is pretty fixed. And if the marketplace changes and prices go up or down, that's not going to be your problem. So that's something to think about. HSAs, I love HSAs. They're only for certain health plans. I think it has to be a high deductible health plan, but they are triple tax advantaged, which means that if I were to put money in an HSA, it goes in tax-free. That money in the HSA grows tax-free. And then when I want to use the money out of that HSA, I get to withdraw it tax-free. That's magic. So if you can, and you're really looking to help out employees in terms of setting them up for long-term success, HSAs are great. And the Trump administration, I think, could jump on the HSA bandwagon. They could change the rules on them in terms of expanding access to them. I would love it. Everything in here, all these fancy 4-letter words that we're probably not going to get to because I don't want to bore you to death. But I will talk to you about them if you really want me to, are all things that are on the table. And so those are things you should just think about. Associated health plans, I guess I should just talk about. Those things are, to me, super intellectually exciting. I talked to my boss last administration, not the Biden, the last Trump administration, saying, hey, we should figure this out and maybe help some of our clients set these up. Basically, what it allows for is unrelated employers that are in a similar industry to band together to basically pool their money for buying insurance purposes. And so you could set up one health plan. All the independent brewers in America theoretically could sign up and be an associated health plan and have much more buying power than you would if you were an individual brewery. That's something to keep an eye on. That, I don't know if that would happen through executive order. I don't think it can. I think that's something that has to come from Congress. But apparently my knowledge of how government works, as learned from Schoolhouse Rock and law school, has been challenged by this administration. So maybe he tries to do it by executive order. I don't know, but that's something to keep an eye on if you guys are having struggles or having issues with medical benefits.
Awesome. Thanks for walking us through all those 3, 4, and 5-letter abbreviations there, Andrew. So now we have another question I'd like to throw out. Someone asked, what's going to happen with DEI initiatives?
Oof, DEI is hot button. I remember the day after the first executive orders, I got an email from an insurance broker, and he said, all my clients are super worried about DEI and eliminating all their DEI programs after these executive orders that came out. And I told him that there's 2 things that he has to keep in mind. Actually, 3 things. Number one, that executive order was basically aimed at federal contractors. I might be mistaken, but I don't think there are a lot of breweries that are federal contractors out there. I mean, I suppose it's possible, but unlikely. I don't have a ton of clients that are federal contractors. I think I've got, north of 10,000 subscribers. And I can probably count on one hand the number of times I've run across an issue of one of them being a federal contractor. Doesn't happen very often, but it could. So most of the general public, in terms of employers, don't have to worry about most of that order. The other issue is going to be with DEI is there's a case that just went up to the Supreme Court last week, and basically they're challenging the standard for reverse discrimination. So I'm an old white dude, pretty clear from the video. I'm over 40, which means I'm in a protected class. I'm, a white male. If I were in the world to go and claim discrimination against my boss, I would have a higher standard than if I was not part of the majority. The way the circuits are set up, there was a fight between some federal circuits in terms of what the standard is to prove discrimination as quote unquote reverse discrimination. And a Supreme Court case just went up last week. They had oral arguments, and they indicated during the case that there was radical agreement amongst the justices about what they're going to do with the standard. And so it sounds to me, if you read the tea leaves, that they're going to lower the standard for trying to prove reverse discrimination. The case was based upon a white woman, I believe is in Michigan, but I don't remember, Michigan, Ohio, one of those two, who claims that she was discriminated against because she wasn't gay, and her bosses were gay, and they promoted gay people ahead of her. And that was her claim. And my opinion, she would have made a lot more hay if she had claimed that she was discriminated against because of her age, because she was over 40. It would have been an easy claim for her, but they took the hard road, and they wanted to claim that it was because of her sexual, her being straight, essentially. And so I expect fully the Supreme Court to change the standard for having to prove quote unquote reverse discrimination to just have one standard for all employees. Either you're discriminated against because of your age, race, just gender, military preference, military status, all those fun protected classes that are out there, or you're not. And it's one test. So that's something that's going to happen. The EEOC has indicated that they're going to drop all transgender cases, which is interesting in that the law that was handed down by the Supreme Court, last term, I think it was, it might have been the term before, said that discrimination against transgender people is discrimination based upon sex. And the executive order did not change the Supreme Court case. The executive order cannot change the Supreme Court case. It just changed what the federal government at the time thinks is discrimination. That doesn't mean that it is legal now to discriminate against transgender people. It's still illegal according to the Supreme Court. And the EEOC is just not going to prosecute it. So what you're probably going to get is more lawsuits. The federal courts are going to get probably pretty clogged up on this because the EEOC is not taking the case, which means that you're just going to go ahead and file suit. And I don't know if you guys have ever been involved in federal litigation. I love court. I used to be a prosecutor. I think it's great. I've probably had north of 100 trials in my life. That said, I know it's not for everybody. I love court. I think civil litigation is boring as all get out. I think it's terrible. I think it takes too long. I think it's drawn out for no good reason. And I dislike it generally. And now, if you think that these cases are going to make it through the federal court in any quick progress, you've probably been, sampling too much of your own product. It's not going to happen. There's going to need to be an increase in court funding from Congress, which is not going to happen in order to get all these cases that I expect to come brought through the court system efficiently. And I just think it's going to be a big cluster. And the third thing about that is, again, this is federal law. State law still applies. Wisconsin will, where I am in Milwaukee, Wisconsin will still bring a case under the Wisconsin Fair Employment Act if you discriminate against someone for being transgender because of sex. Minnesota, under the Minnesota Human Rights Act, will do the same. Lots of states are still going to be protecting these workers, despite what the federal government says, because there's not separation of powers necessarily, but separation of jurisdiction. People in their states get to choose what they think they can protect and what they don't want to protect. So for example, if South Dakota, I don't expect to be on the bleeding edge of transgender right protection. I would expect, places like California, New Jersey, Minnesota, Washington, those states, Colorado, to be, on that vanguard of protecting their employees' rights and picking up the baton that is going to be dropped by the EEOC.
Awesome. Andrew, anything else we should know on the DEI front?
I think in general, DEI, people are super scared of it because of what's happened since January 20th or 21st, whatever that day was. I think you can still do DEI. I don't think you have to abandon all DEI programs. I think you just have to take a critical look, and make sure that you're not doing it by setting, hard numbers that you have to meet. The whole goal of DEI is not to hire quotas. The whole goal of DEI is to get a diverse pool of qualified applicants. And if that's all you're doing with your DEI programs, number one, you've met the goals of DEI, in my opinion. And number two, you are not running afoul of anything under federal or state law by ensuring that you have a diverse pool of applicants. And if that's as far as you take it, that's great. It gets tricky when you start to try to put numbers and quotas on things. And that's probably where this administration will try to get you.
Awesome. Thanks, Andrew, for all that insight. Now, I believe next we have OSHA. So as we switch to that slide, the question that someone has asked us with regards to OSHA is they've heard about the pending OSHA heat safety rule that was proposed by the Biden administration. Is that still going to happen?
It's a great question. Probably a really good one for breweries, because not only do you guys have, heat up, all the barley and grain, and I'd throw out words like mash tun and louder, whatever, but I'd get them wrong because I'm an attorney. I live near the Miller Brewery and I can smell it and I drive through it, but that doesn't mean I know what they're doing. What happened, and you guys, if you're a smaller operation, maybe you operate your own food trucks, maybe you have your own kitchen. I know my quote unquote local brewery that I've been going to for 26 years now, Lakefront Brewery. They have their own kitchen, and they're what I call the polka hall. And it can get hot in there, especially in the summer. And so there are rules. There is a rule that was proposed by Biden's OSHA administration called the heat safety rule that's going to, provide requirements for what employers have to do in terms of a plan for heat safety for their employees to make sure that they don't get too hot and all that fun stuff. The issue is that in order to have it that order repealed, that proposed rule repealed, is that there has to be a functioning OSHA. And the last administration, Trump actually failed to appoint, intentionally failed. It's not like he just didn't, forgot about it. He intentionally failed to appoint a head of OSHA. And as a result, they could undertake no real rulemaking process. And all at the same time, they couldn't withdraw any rules that were proposed or in place. And so if history repeats, and there is no head of OSHA that can do any sort of rulemaking, has any rulemaking authority, the Trump administration will actually be unable to withdraw this rule, and it will go into a place, because of the two greatest words in the English language, by default. And so it's something to keep an eye on. I did read that there was an undersecretary of number 2 of OSHA was appointed. I don't know if they got around to number 1 yet, but it's something to keep an eye on. If they never get somebody in place, that rule will go into place, by default. Same with the walk around rule. And so I don't know if it's going to happen, but it could still go into place just because of inaction.
On the OSHA front, is there anything else we should be aware of as we kind of progress into 2025?
Yeah, OSHA is it's an interesting animal. I don't practice a ton of OSHA. I know enough to be dangerous. I know know enough when you need somebody, to specialize in it, but I can get you through the basics of it. And what I'm saying is that if you look at the trend lines from the first Trump administration towards this one, enforcement is going to go down. There's probably a couple reasons for that. Number one, DOJ, right? If they fire all the federal workers who can actually do the inspections and levy the fines, that's a discussion for another time. But number two, the new administration is, quote unquote, business friendly. And their goal is to, eliminate regulations and to, help businesses, make money. If OSHA was smart, and if state OSHAs were smart, they'd go after the place where people are being injured the most, and that is roofing. I think roofing is the number one workplace injury industry. And I mean, they would just mobilize and send everyone to, roofing jobs and, start finding people or whatever they want to do. So I don't expect that to happen because, like I said, they're decreasing the number of federal employees. They're not increasing them. There's not going to be a ton of OSHA inspectors running around looking at people on roofs to making sure that they have steel-toed boots and that they have, the tape around the edge so nobody falls. I think they're going to be focused more on other things than actual on-site inspections. And I think they're going to be working on eliminating regulations rather than enforcing them. But that's probably good news for you guys. You probably don't love it when OSHA comes around, or if you have a state equivalent. But that's all something to keep in mind as we're talking about OSHA.
Awesome. Thanks, Andrew. And I know you have a slide prepared on the Department of Labor, and we did have a question submitted on that one. Someone had asked, a brewery owner had asked, what's going to happen with the Fair Labor Standards Act?
All right, let me get to the right slide here. But I will tell you, there it is. Fair Labor Standards Act. Interesting question. Minimum wage is at $7.25 at the federal level. State level might be higher. I'm looking at you, California. I'm looking, New Jersey, New York, Washington. Some individual cities have higher minimum wage, but the only way that it's going to change at the federal level is through an act of Congress. Congress last session was probably statistically the least effective Congress since the Civil War in terms of number of bills passed. This session, I think they did pass the Lake and Riley Act already, but they don't seem to be too jazzed up about actually doing anything on their own at this point. So I would say that unless Trump says let's raise the minimum wage, that they'll do it. There have been ideas floated about comp time. So right now, comp time is illegal unless you're a federal government employee. So the federal government, my dad was a librarian for the Veterans Administration until he retired. If he worked more than 40 hours in a week, he got comp time, which means that instead of overtime, he got to take a day off based upon however many hours he worked, over 40 in a week. I'm not sure how much traction this is going to have. A lot of employees that make overtime kind of need that overtime, not, to make ends meet. They kind of rely on it overtime. And so that's going to be, is that something that employees really want? And does Congress even care if that's what employees want? I don't know. There's also, so I wouldn't expect it, but there have been rumors of it. They've also proposed eliminating taxes on tips and overtime. And that is an issue, right? Like much of the election cycle, a lot has been proposed, but there have been kind of a dearth of details. The news cycle was endlessly driven by poll numbers and, who's winning today in this city and who's losing and what percentage do they change. And nobody really dove into employment law policies like I care about, or, pin people down on how they're going to pay for things. So Congress just passed, or the House just passed, the start of the Republican budget. And if you look at it, there's really no space in it for eliminating taxes on overtimes and, tips. And it's going to be an issue in this budget cycle, because I don't think it's possible. They're already talking about the only way to meet their budget numbers to slash Medicare or Medicaid. And that's going to be, a hot topic issue. So I can't imagine them being able to avoid that while satisfying the Republicans that claim that there can be no more increased federal deficit. And all of a sudden they eliminate these taxes, which would increase the deficit. So it's possible. I wouldn't expect it this year, maybe next year, something to keep an eye on. And I think it's questionable whether eliminating taxes on tips is actually going to benefit employees. It's going to hurt employees in the long run. I just got an email from Social Security Administration about how much money I'm going to get, when I turn 62 to 70, if I elected to choose my Social Security payout based upon the quarters worked. And, the quarters worked and the amount that they owe, or the amount that they have earned, is, counted, uses their taxes, their tips, and their overtime. And so if they're not taxed on it through FICA, it doesn't count towards their Social Security numbers. It doesn't count towards their Social Security quarters. And so they're not going to get paid as much when it comes time to, nab their Social Security. Now, maybe that's exactly what they're trying to do. Maybe they we don't want these people to earn as much Social Security, so we'll not tax their benefits, their wages now as much, so they qualify for less later. It's entirely possible.
Is there anything we can do to prepare for potential changes, whether this year, who knows, a year or two in the future?
This one is just kind of a hurry up and wait. Make sure that you understand how these changes will affect payroll. Make sure that, through your payroll provider, whoever it is, that you understand if you have to do anything on your end in order to make those changes to not tax tips or overtime, or if that's something that's going to be done on the back end through your HRIS, HCM, payroll provider, whatever you want to call it, to make sure that that's going to get done appropriately.
Awesome. Thanks, Andrew. And I know someone also submitted a final question in relation to your National Labor Relations Board slide. And the question they asked was, is the Trump administration going to mean that I don't have to worry about unions in my workforce any longer? And unions are a hot topic in CBP. So for anyone, who is in those past threads, throw all your questions at Andrew right now.
I will say that I do know the head of the Milwaukee, Minneapolis office of the NLRB personally. So I can poke him with questions, and his wife too. She also works for the NLRB. Presumably they still have jobs, which is probably a big presumption. That said, actually, interesting question. I know that, was it Fair State is unionized? I know that for sure. I don't know of any others off the top of my head. I can't think of any that I've read about. But anyways, unionization is really an interesting topic. Is unionization dead? Do you not have to worry about unions anymore because of the NLRB situation? Yes, you still have to worry about them. There are issues going on right now at the NLRB, which are really interesting. The NLRB, which is the National Labor Relations Board, is made up of 5, usually attorneys, that decide policy for the National Labor Relations Board. And if you look at my beautiful pendulum here, it swings from left to right, depending on who is in office and who is appointed what members when. First thing that Trump did is he fired the general counsel for the National Labor Relations Board. The general counsel is essentially the prosecutor for the National Labor Relations Board. She brings the cases to the board and she says we should prosecute these cases or not. And she also elicited various policy memos, tipping her hand in terms of what she thought was important for the board and for policy to go. That was GC Abruzzo. She was summarily dismissed upon Trump's resumption of office. And the new general counsel has started to repeal her memos, or rescind is the right word, rescind her memos, and basically counteract what she's doing. More interesting from a law dork perspective is that he also fired at least one member of the National Labor Relations Board. And the question is, does he have the authority to terminate board members of an independent agency? My opinion is that with the NLRB, I think the statute is pretty clear that he does not have the authority. So based upon the black and white letter of the law, Commissioner Wilcox should get her position back. But the administration is challenging that law on other constitutional grounds, which, are above my pay grade to decide. And it has to do, if you read about it, the unified executive theory. If you really wanted to get some good sleep tonight and you were having trouble falling asleep, read the case Humphrey's Executor. That'll help you fall asleep. But that's the case that's really at point here with presidential powers. But until the National Labor Relations Board has a quorum, which right now they don't, they can't basically change too much. The board will still continue to act, but without a quorum, they can't make any big, broad decisions. So if you might remember the Stericycle case from August of 23, that made everyone have to change their employee handbooks based upon what the National Labor Relations Board said was now unlawful and was not unlawful. That is still good law. And until Trump, or unless Trump appoints more members to the National Labor Relations Board, presuming he can or can't, depending on what the court says about his authority to fire Wilcox, is going to be an interesting thing in terms of what happens with union regulation. This administration, if you were to ask me on November 6th, if they were going to be pro-union or anti-union, I would have said they're going to be anti-union. I would have bet a lot of money on it. I have been surprised. The DOL hired Congresswoman from Oregon, I can't remember her name, to be the head. And she is pro-union. She introduced pro-union bills in the House as a Republican last year. Josh Hawley, senator from Missouri, has jumped on the union train, and the union train hard. He has proposed a list of things that he wants to get done, and there are a lot of pro-union points in that policy points that he wants to make. And so it's interesting that this, I think I mentioned it at the top, that there are some things that they're doing that just don't completely make sense to me in terms of what their general policy positions are going to be. You generally think of, Democrats as pro-labor and Republicans as not. But there's some weird things happening here that I either don't understand or just don't make sense. And so that's something to pay attention to. But all the kind of crazy stuff that the National Labor Relations Board did in the last 2.5 years is still good law, and it's still going to be, good law until and unless Trump gets a quorum on the National Labor Relations Board and they actually do something.
Awesome. I do appreciate your answer to that question. Anything else regarding the NLRB we should be taking in today?
No, I'm good.
Cool, Andrew. You've thrown a lot of really helpful information at us the past almost hour at this point in time. As we wind down, are there any other topics you'd like to cover or reminders you'd like to offer people operating breweries?
I don't see any fun questions that have come in, which is okay. There's a lot of nonsense, at the federal level, and it's kind of hard to make sense of. So at this point, I just, I don't want to inundate people and have them, completely shut down. So I'll just show these next couple slides that, if you have questions for us, here's how you can get in touch with us. I think my email's in here in the chat. Yeah, there it is. This is not going to be an administration for the timid. This is something that you're going to have to keep on top of, but not overreact to. The courts are going to serve as a guardrail, to some of these executive orders. They're going to shut down some of them. Some of them might be upheld. We don't know. But I think it's going to be, from my perspective, a very interesting time to pay attention to employment law. It might get a little crazy, but it's going to be important to at least stay on top of what's happening. And if you guys don't want to sign up with us, completely understand, but we also offer a newsletter. That doesn't cost you guys anything. You guys want to sign up for the newsletter, let us know too. Just email info@myHRcounsel.com. Say you want to sign up for the newsletter, and we'll help you out with that too, so that you can stay on top of all the fun, exciting things that are happening.
A lot of breweries don't have a dedicated HR department or even an HR person. Everybody's often wearing many hats. So something like you're offering is definitely a value add.
Yeah. I deal with, everything from a company with a couple thousand employees to my favorite, I shouldn't say this, but one of my favorites is they're a grain elevator in South Dakota, where the person who runs HR is also the one who runs the truck scale, so we're used to dealing with all different sorts.
I love it. Well, Andrew, I've had a great time hanging out with you today. Appreciate all the insight. Everybody, thanks for tuning in. We'll see you soon. Cheers.
Thank you.